welcome to Yankees League the One YouTube channel. If this is your first time on my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the red subscribe button down below and turn on the bell icon. Tell me what you think about this video in the comment section.
And yet,
Acting
in his
President,
retirement,
before you go there, thank you very much, and thank you for the quick update to our audience. The decision to bury the late president in South Africa has attracted controversy, has attracted concerns. The standoff between Zambia's head of state, President Hakainde Hichilema, and the family is also a matter of serious concern, to the extent that President Cyril Ramaphosa had to send his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ronald Lamola, to Zambia to explain that the standoff, probably they wish that it could be resolved, but in the event that the family made a decision to put to rest the late president in South Africa, that there was nothing they could do, because that was the law, that was the precedent. Many high cases like this, except that they were not president, like the case of the general in Angola, where the two states found themselves in similar circumstances, the court favored the family. President of Zimbabwe, President Emerson Mnangagwa, who was a classmate of President Edgar Lungu, took it very personal. He even sent his vice president to attempt to resolve this matter. You saw the images at State House. President Hakainde Hichilema literally dismissed, said this was a matter between him and the family, and it was a Zambian affair, and it will be resolved. President Jacob Zuma, the former president, was denied landing rights in the quest to resolve this issue. And of course, many circumstances that led to Hichilema abruptly cancelling the period of national mourning that was supposed to go up to 23rd of June, and he abruptly cancelled it on the 19th. We are a ridicule in the region. Clearly, friends of Zambia, friends of Edgar Lungu, friends of President Hakainde Hichilema have attempted to resolve this issue. I shouldn't even forget about the Malawian president, a former Malawian president, Bakili Muluzi, and his son, who have also been very instrumental in trying to resolve this issue. We even are aware of the former president in Tanzania. Why hasn't President Hakainde Hichilema helped resolve this matter? Why has instead sued the widow and the family? What is your reflection?
Ambassador, thank you for what you've just said now. And indeed, we ought to pay gratitude to all current and former statesmen and women in the region for their intercession. They were doing that because their desire was that Zambia should continue to maintain its integrity as a country. And we owe them gratitude. And on behalf of the Patriotic Front, I thank them most sincerely for their efforts. Yes, Zambia indeed now is standing as a laughingstock, not only in the region, but globally. Because now everybody who is following this matter is wondering how a people, through their government, can subject a poor woman, a widow, to mourning for more than 60 days. How a government can use its machinery to subject a family to come to a standstill in their lives because of the desire by the government to have access to the mortal remains of a former president. And when I say government, I am being too general. because I don't think that there has ever been a meeting in Zambia where government officials, civil servants, and the three wings of government, including parliament, sat to demand that the mortal remains of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu must be buried in Lusaka. The desire, as far as I can see, is the desire by one person, President Hakainde. Should people be subjected to 60 days of mourning simply because one man has this insatiable appetite to cause pain in others? Because for me, and for many other people who are following this matter, the only reason why this matter has not been put to bed is because somebody is enjoying the suffering of the others. And we have to ask ourselves a question, Ambassador. We have to ask ourselves a question. The family was willing to repatriate the body. The family had agreed that President Hakainde would be allowed to superintend over the visitors, the dignitaries. But they said President Edgar Chagwa Lungu himself made a wish, a death wish, that because of the amount of pain, because of the amount of suffering that Hakainde Hichilema has made me go through, I would not like him to be at my burial. I would not like him to come and say anything, because if he comes there and says good things about me, it will be an act of hypocrisy. And when the family said, as long as you don't come and speak, as long as your government doesn't come to speak, we will allow you to come and bury our dear president at Embassy Park. Then they themselves as government decided, no, President Hakainde must go and have a church service at the airport. A church service which hadn't been agreed upon by the family. Doesn't it make sense? Didn't it make sense when the family said, in that case, please don't force us, we shall bury the mortal remains of our dear father, our dear husband, our dear brother, where we want to bury him, where you will not have access. What is the issue with that? And to just correct you, Ambassador, much as the official documents in court are saying that the first respondent is the widow, and the second to the sixth respondents are family members, and the seventh is the family spokesperson who happens to be lawyer Makebi Zulu. The truth of the matter is that the one who was indicted is Edgar Chagwa Lungu. The one who, as far as I'm concerned, is in court today is Edgar Chagwa Lungu. And that is the reason why his mortal remain uninterred. They remain unburied to this day. Now, how can a country sink so low as to keep the remains of its former president uninterred purely because one man wants to be there to superintend, to preside over the burial of his predecessor? It is totally unexplainable. I wonder whether there is anybody who has an explanation. As for me and others, we have wrecked our minds to try and understand what is it that President Hakainde wants out of this burial. What is it? Because if he was to just say, I'm staying away from the burial, there would be no problem. And Ambassador, you know very well, there are many examples we can cite in the region. Here in South Africa, not too long ago, the former vice president and the family decided the burial shall be a private affair. The government did not insist. They buried their former president. It is now a matter of history. Remember what also happened when President Robert Mugabe died. Madam Mugabe said they did not want President Mnangagwa to go to the burial. President Mnangagwa said, I will oblige. I will only stand at the airport to receive the mortal remains of my predecessor. After that, I'll have nothing to do with the burial. But as head of state, I will facilitate for the burial of a former head of state. The burial took place without any hullabaloo, without any such drama. What is it that has befallen my dear country? To the extent that the mortal remains of a man suffered for the country could remain in the morgue, could remain in the freezer for 60 days. And I'd like to remind your viewers, Ambassador, I was saying to you that President Edgar Lungu superintended over the development of a lot of infrastructure facilities in Zambia. I was talking about markets. He built several markets across the breadth and width of Zambia. And yet, in his retirement, when he went to a market, he was stopped by the police. He contributed to the building and strengthening of the Christian faith. He was loved by people of church. He was invited to various churches, and yet the government was stopping him even to go into church. He is the one who superintended over the completion of the construction of the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. The Zambia Airways 2014 came about during the time when Edgar Chagwa Lungu was Minister of Justice. And as president, he ensured that Zambia Airways 2014 would operate as a viable business. And yet, President Edgar Lungu was not allowed to go and use that airport. He was not allowed to board Zambia Airways 2014. President Edgar Lungu paved roads across the country. And yet the poor man, in his retirement, even jogging was prohibited. He was not allowed to jog. President Edgar Lungu was invited to a peace conference in South Korea. And I went ahead of him. The two of us were invited. I went ahead of him as his vice president, only to be shocked to be told 2 days later that your dear president has boarded off a plane. How did anyone expect President Edgar Lungu to behave? When President Edgar Lungu requested in 2022, he informed government, I have a condition which has been attended to by doctors in South Africa. Please permit me to go and meet my doctors. Secretary to Cabinet or Deputy Secretary to Cabinet wrote to him saying, sorry, the government does not have money. He responded and said, please facilitate for me to go. I will get money from friends and family. And as you saw in the response by Muliro Kabesha in court, he said they stopped him from going to South Korea because they feared that he was going to politic. They stopped him to go to church because they feared that he was going to politic. They stopped him from jogging because they feared he was going to politic. They stopped him even to come to South Africa to have medical attention because he did not disclose the ailment, the condition he had. And when you hear this being a submission of a government to a court of law, you even wonder, what kind of justice system do we have? Because everybody knows that the health condition of an individual is a private matter. Why did they expect President Edgar Lungu to say to them, this is my condition? And yet, as a matter of fact, as you and I, Ambassador, and as many viewers of yours will know, as former head of state, his health file is in the possession of government. So they knew what his condition was.
Yeah.
And all this was happening to this poor man. And they expected, how did they expect?
This case is very similar to what happened in Ghana. And I'm glad that there has been public announcement to the effect that one day the remains of the late president will lie in Zambia. You know, when Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of the Republic of Ghana, died in Bucharest in Romania on 27th April 1972. Remember, there was a coup against him and there was a hostile government against him. It was decided that he would be buried in Guinea. President Sekou Touré then offered to bury the late president in Guinea. And for 20 years, the remains of Kwame Nkrumah lay in Guinea. It was only later, when there was a friendly government, that there was a negotiation between the family, the government of Ghana, and the government of Guinea, that the remains were now taken to Ghana. They were initially buried at his hometown. But again, I think a few years later, it was decided that he should be brought to the National Monument, where a mausoleum was created for him. He was buried 3 times. The family has said one day the remains of the late president will come to Zambia. Let us go to the other issues. The state of the Patriotic Front, it is of great worry. The late president went on leave, I think, shortly after swearing in of President Hakainde Hichilema. The reins were handed over to you to run the party, the Central Committee, and you began even a succession process. You even as a party identified candidates who should have stood. That process was rudely disrupted, and we are where we are now, where you have imposters holding to the legal reins of the party. Just speak to this matter.
Before I move to that, let me just reaffirm what you just said and reaffirm the position of the family. That President Edgar Chagwa Lungu was a very special president. Special in the sense that even when the odds were against him, even when people advised him that going to the Heroes Stadium to hand over power to President Edgar Chagwa Lungu was not going to be a pleasant affair, he still stood tall. He invited a number of us. I recall there was Professor Nkanduluo, there was Madam Sylvia Charlie-Kosa, there was Madam Jean Kapata, and I happened to have been privileged to have been among them. We went to that stadium in the company of his daughter. We went to that stadium. And when President Edgar Lungu was handing over the instruments of power, President Hakainde received them. Instead, he called a private fellow, private security man of his, to receive the instruments of power, which is not done, by the way, because the instruments of power are passed from the former president to the incoming president, from the outgoing president to the incoming president. In this particular case, the one who received the instruments of power was not the president, it was his security guard. And spontaneously, there was booing and jeering by who? Obviously the stadium, 60,000-seater stadium, was filled by supporters of the current president. And he did not as much as just raise a finger to say, please, this is a former head of state. He has handed power to me in a highly dignified manner. Instead, he enjoyed that showing of hate by the 60,000 people who were in that stadium. You would have expected President Edgar Lungu to bow his head. He didn't. He walked with dignity. And when we got where we went after that, he said to us, my dear friends, I have done what I was supposed to have done, and my soul is at peace. Even when he was tormented, President Edgar Lungu still stood tall. And I have to remind the Zambian people and all those who are watching us that at the time when President Edgar Lungu decided that he was going to give away the trappings of former head of state, he was doing it for his love for his country. He had so much love for Zambia's democracy. When he saw that his Patriotic Front party was being decimated, when he realized that democracy in Zambia was being challenged, when he realized that the freedoms that our forebears suffered for and died for were being challenged by Hakainde Hichilema, he decided, I cannot continue to be quiet. I cannot continue to enjoy the trappings of being former head of state. Rather, I'm divorcing myself from being given all these benefits, if that be the case, because I want to fight for Zambia's democracy. He therefore died, not only for his dear family, he died for Zambia. And because he died for Zambia, I can say today with no fear of contradiction that there shall come a when the mortal remains of that great man shall grace his dear country. In the event that the court in South Africa do as the family have requested, there certainly will be a day when that great man shall be taken to rest in the country for which he died, the country that he so much loved. As far as we in the Patriotic Front are concerned, we say to the family, and we say amongst ourselves, that all we're looking for is temporary shelter for the mortal remains of our dear president, not for his final resting place, because that has to be in his dear country, because he fought for that country. He fought for its democracy. He died in pursuit of the democracy of Zambia. And that democracy is the vision that drives all of us in the Patriotic Front. And indeed, coming to your question, when President Edgar Lungu stepped aside after the elections of 2021, he said to me, in the presence of my colleagues, the ones whose names I've mentioned, he said, I have run my race. I will not continue. I would like you, my colleagues, to continue where I have left. And he turned to me and said, my brother, I know you told me in 2019 that you are retiring from politics, and that's why you did not even contest as Member of Parliament. However, I request you, may you hold the fort, lead the party. And I said to him, Your Excellency, this is an enormous task you're giving to me. And he said, I trust you. Lead the party. And yes, Ambassador, it hasn't been an easy journey. But I have to say here, it has been a journey where I have had and received, happily so, a lot of support from my colleagues in the Central Committee, from all leaders in different structures of the party. They have stood by me. I have not done it by myself, and I cannot credit myself for what we have done because we have done it together. I also ought to say that once in a while, I picked up the phone to consult my elder brother. Guide me. What should I do? Oftentimes he would say to me, learn the ropes. But there were also times when he came out to me and told me, my brother, this is what I suggest you do. So this journey, Ambassador, has not been a journey for an individual. This has been a journey for the party. And I'm determined to be a part of this team. And I'm sure that as a team, we will get to where President Edgar Chagwa Lungu wanted us to get. And that is to ensure that in 2026, we restore the democracy of Zambia. President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, being a keen follower of democracy and a promoter of democracy and a promoter of national unity, even when he was in retirement, he kept urging us in the Patriotic Front not to look upon ourselves as an end unto ourselves, but as a means to uniting the country. And he encouraged all of us to unite with other opposition political parties. The message he delivered to the Zambian people on the 28th of October 2023, when he returned to active politics, he said he was coming back to active politics, and he called upon all other political party leaders of different opposition political parties to come together, to unite with one purpose and one purpose only: to provide a democratic government that would ensure that Zambians enjoy their freedoms. That is what that man endeavored to achieve for his people, for his dear country. And we in the Patriotic Front are determined to do that one thing: to unite as a party and to unite as opposition political parties with only one vision in mind: to provide to the Zambian people an environment in which they can be happy, an environment in which they can call
acting president,
Zambia as their country.
Yeah, acting president, the current status of the Patriotic Front is in peril. Like I stated, the registered owners is, like I said, imposters, Robert Chavinga, against a law, against a constitution. The Electoral Commission of Zambia has disenfranchised the Patriotic Front from participating in by-elections. Your members of parliament have not been spared, despite strong leadership by Brian Mundubile at parliament. There's been chaos where you've lost over, I think, 6 seats, unfortunately, and the leadership at parliament, which the party had placed on, led by Brian Mundubile, has been removed. The people are worried. You have an enormous task as a Patriotic Front to participate in elections, to help build a strong opposition, to help prepare the country to go to elections and erase of power from President Hakainde Hichilema. Yet the party that's supposed to be an engine, the fulcrum of this development, lies in tatters. Just give us reflections about that.
To say that the Patriotic Front lies in tatters is to give undue credit to Hakainde Hichilema. Indeed, Hakainde Hichilema's intention by assisting the coup that occurred on the 24th of October 2023 was to decimate the Patriotic Front. Even when Miles Sampa, who was the kingpin of that coup, recollected his senses and came back to the party and declared that that coup must be invalidated, and that whatever was an outcome of that coup or so-called convention must be nullified, we saw that the Registrar of Societies decided they will not amend the list of office bearers. Instead, they continued to recognize Robert Chavinga and Ngonga, who, as a matter of fact, were a product of the illegal coup, the legal convention. And all this has happened because Hakainde has realized that he did not manage to achieve his objective of taking the Patriotic Front into obliteration. The Patriotic Front is not a piece of paper. The Patriotic Front ambassador is not the register at the Registrar of Societies office. No, the Patriotic Front is a spirit. The Patriotic Front are the people themselves, the people who hold legitimate positions right from the sections across the country, through branches, wards, constituencies, districts, provinces, and members of the Central Committee. Those are the Patriotic Front. Yes, we saw how quickly the UPN delegates at the Electoral Commission of Zambia decided to come up with an obnoxious regulation which has never ever existed in Zambia. It's an unprecedented regulation which requires that for any political party to participate in any national elections, the adoption certificates of the candidates in that election must be signed by a president and a secretary general, and that the electoral commission would go and compare the names with the names at the registrar of society's office. Never has that happened, never. We knew that they were doing that because they were targeting the Patriotic Front. And you may recall, and your viewers may recall, that for 1 year, the Patriotic Front did not take part in any elections. And that was because of that regulation that was introduced by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. We sat back and we said, we cannot continue to deny the Zambian people credible opposition. We cannot allow the Zambian people to go to the polls, be there by elections, without formidable opposition. We decided to join hands with our colleagues in UCA and later on in the Tonse Alliance. And in the Tonse Alliance, we sat and agreed that we're going to use a special purpose vehicle to participate in elections. And ever since then, we've been participating in all the by-elections. The Patriotic Front is alive and it is participating in these elections. Now, little wonder when you saw that in the recent by-elections, which are going to go to the polls on the 7th of August, the ECZ changed their position and said, besides ensuring that only the presidents and secretary general of the political parties will sign the adoption certificates, now even the regalia, the campaign materials of a political party that is not on the ballot paper will not be allowed. Now, this is going against the principle of freedom of expression. I can go to a by-election where I don't have a particular candidate from my party, but I can go and support a candidate of another political party. Nobody can stop me. And if I go there donning campaign material of my political party, it is not an offense. There is no such law in Zambia. And the reason they're doing that is because the ECZ, on behalf of Hakainde Hichilema, are scared stiff. Just the regalia of the Patriotic Front, particularly the regalia having the portrait of Edgar Chagwa Lungu. I have said before, and I'll say again, they feared him in his life. They fear him more in his death. And I want to assure Zambians, the portrait of Edgar Chagwa Lungu shall continue to haunt them, and we in the Patriotic Front shall continue to use it.
Indeed, Acting President, the Patriotic Front is in the hearts of people, not on a illegal paper held by an expelled MP from Mafinga. My dear cousins in Mafinga are also annoyed with their MP. Let us go to the current state of our country. I think, like we described what is happening to the PF, the people of Zambia had chosen President Hakainde Hichilema to replace President Edgar Lungu. President Hakainde Hichilema presented himself as a Mr. Fixer, that he was going to resolve the crisis of the country, the cost of living crisis. He said he was going to reduce the prices of foodstuffs, fuel, electricity, and other things. He said he will not allow borrowings and there will be a moratorium on debt. He said he will respect human rights and there will be rights and freedoms in the country. He has done the opposite. We are now being quoted that we have descended to a tyranny and a dictatorship. The cost of living crisis is actually even trebled than it was at 2021. He said he would not borrow. He accused you of borrowing a lot of loans, accumulating a lot of loans. He has also now hugely borrowed up to $4 billion in foreign loans, and he has ballooned the local debt from 178 billion 178 billion kwacha to 236 billion kwacha. In every parameter, he's abusing human rights. And it's not you or me saying it. is being cited in respected national documents, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations Human Rights Council, the US country report that is killing, is engaged in extrajudicial killings, that he has stifled freedom of expression, that is implementing literally a tyranny with the passing of a cake and repressive laws. He has shut down freedom of expression in our country. Yet he preaches to the people that he has succeeded, that he has CDF, and people are roaming freely in markets. Just speak to the state of the country right now.
You put it very well. And I'd like to start by talking about Parliament. And Parliament, because that is the epitome of the exercise of freedom of expression. That is the epitome of the practice of democracy in any democratic state. Let's take a little review of the performance of Parliament. In 4 years, your government has managed to ostracize 7 members of Parliament, all of them from the opposition. Your Parliament has had one among itself abducted, left for dead, taken to a hospital, allowed to leave that hospital in very strange circumstances, and being away from the public eye. And yet your government gives it a blind eye, and your government decides to call by-elections rapidly to replace that member without showing any interest in trying to trace where one of its members of parliament is. Your government decided to go against the court in the matter of Malanji, Joseph Malanji, and Lusambo concerning the elections in their constituencies. Even when the Constitutional Court decided that those elections were illegal, your government under Hakainde Hichilema went ahead and held elections, and even celebrate today that the people of Kabushi and Kwa elected members of parliament. And yet the truth of the matter was that there was a protest in those 2 constituencies. Today, you have a parliament where a member of parliament is indicted and convicted for what they say in parliament. Where is the principle of exclusive cognizance for parliament? Worldwide, what members of parliament say in parliament enjoys immunity under the principle of exclusive cognizance. And yet a parliamentarian, by stating that he suspected that some people had received bribes, that member of parliament today is incarcerated. Another member of parliament was incarcerated, a seat declared vacant, notwithstanding the fact that that member of parliament appealed their conviction. This member of parliament was simply asking, in response to a statement that was made by a person who said, if Edgar Chagwalungu comes to our region, we shall kill him. And this member of parliament simply asked, is this the country we shall lead? Is this the country we shall have, where people are scared to go to visit certain regions? Should we all carry arms? That member of parliament was convicted. She appealed her conviction and is yet to appear in court. Meanwhile, her seat was declared vacant and an election declared. 2 members of parliament, one of them, unfortunately, a lame man, was convicted. A member of parliament convicted for arson. And people stated that after he committed arson, he ran away and he couldn't be apprehended by witnesses. A lame man a man who can't even run. He can hardly walk. Another one was convicted because somebody said he bought grass. And yet he was 100 kilometers away from the scene of arson. But simply because somebody said yes, he was seen buying dry grass, which grass was meant for thatching a house. Just for that, he was convicted. Now, when you have a country in which the security of tenure of members of parliament is under constant threat, where 7 members of parliament have their seats declared vacant in a space of 4 years, where members of parliament, when they stand to defend the constitution, they are suspended, as the case occurred when members of parliament of the Patriotic stood up in parliament in the defense of the constitution when government was about to pass a national budget using an old constitution, a repealed constitution. The budget was quoting a repealed constitution. And members stood up and said, if we proceed with this budget under the premise of the provision of a repealed constitution, anyone in the country can go to court and challenge the legality of this budget. Instead of parliament listening to those members of parliament and supporting them, they were punished. Members of parliament in Zambia, as far as I am concerned, and you remember, Ambassador, I'm not talking from without. I was privileged to have been elected 4 consecutive times by the good people of Kabwata constituency. I was in parliament representing them religiously for 20 years. I therefore have 2 years experience of being a parliamentarian, 10 of which years I was in the opposition, and therefore nobody can tell me about opposition politics in parliament. Never ever have we seen before a situation where members of parliament get into dialogue with a speaker. No. The presiding officers are presiding officers. They are arbiters to make sure that there is free debate across the political divide. And yet today, when a member of parliament stands up and they say, I want to ask a question to the minister, even before the minister is given an opportunity to answer, the presiding officer is preferring an answer. How? If indeed Parliament is a neutral arbiter which allows the free flow and free exchange of policy ideas, parliamentarians representing different political parties, how come the presiding officers have answers on behalf of the executive? What this shows is that in Zambia, the executive is simply an appendage of the executive. Parliament is simply an appendage of the executive. But you can also extend this, Ambassador. You have heard how even the judiciary responds speedily to executive pronouncements. President Hakainde just wakes up one day and says, I want a fast-track court, the Economic and Financial Crimes Court, to be established. A few days later, the Chief Justice stands up and says, I have established this court. Establishing a division of the court, of the High Court, without following the due process of the law, simply because the president has pronounced his decree. In Zambia, Ambassador, we are being governed by decrees. We are not being governed by the principles of the separation of the 3 wings of government.
Thank you, President.
You just have to see, when you talk about the promises, Ambassador, when you talk about the promises, I want to draw one small little example. President Hakainde, in the run-up to the elections, promised the Zambian people that when you vote for him, he will make sure that every Zambian has 3 square meals a day. Only a few months ago, he was in his own village, where he was advising his fellow villagers that please, when you have supper, the remains of food, don't throw that food. Instead, keep it and give it to your children in the morning. Why this departure? Why this 180-degree shift? He promised that every Zambian would have 3 square meals a day. And now he's saying, don't even feed dogs with the remains of supper. This is the reason why, Ambassador, when you go around the streets of Lusaka, you rarely see stray dogs because people are not keeping dogs anymore. They can't afford them. And the reason they can't afford them is because they were duped.
Yes,
Their
yes,
president promised that you'll have excess food.
Yes,
Yes,
Acting
sir.
President. We'll be inviting callers shortly, and I hope that you can take some questions. But before I do that, the question of unity is becoming imperative. You've just immediately given us a broad picture of the state of the country. It's in dire strait. It's in a desperate state. People are saying they changed government in 2021 so that they could have a better life, better hope, and management of the affairs of the country better. They jumped from a pan into the fire. Things are worse. Atwali toloke misu, wanyanta pamafi. And now they are looking for leadership. Where is the leadership? The leadership is in the reservoir of you people in the opposition. But there it appears that everyone in the opposition is just pursuing their personal ambitions, their personal goals, and there doesn't seem to be very good unity that can inspire people. Credit to President Edgar Lungu. He tried very hard personally to bring the opposition together. I remember the first press conference that was attended by over 11 political parties, including Dr. Fred Membe and Winter Kabimba. In the background was President Edgar Lungu trying hard to put the opposition together. There was the formation of the United Culture Alliance. Now there was later a breakaway called Tonse Alliance, which you lead as chair. And there appears to be turbulence. And some political parties are not even members of any opposition alliance. This is worrying to the people of Zambia. What are you doing about this? Is a united front the answer to the people of Zambia, or will we allow whoever wishes to stand on their right? Wouldn't it give advantage to President Hakainde Hichilema, who nearly the entire country is complaining about?
The country's voice is very clear. There is a clarion call from many Zambians that we in the opposition must unite. Unity of opposition political parties is an imperative. We ought to unite. In pursuing that unity, we also ought to ensure that we do this without leaving any political party behind. We're living in very interesting times, because even during the subsistence, even during the life of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, there was always this tussling for who shall be the leader. And selecting a leader for the opposition cannot be kids' play. It requires synergy of the various players. In trying to arrive at that synergy, we must accept that there will be points of departure. Some of these points of departure may be handled in a very subtle manner. Some of them may be handled in a friendly manner. But also we have to accept the fact that we, leaders of different political parties, have a diversity that is a representation of the country at large. There are also others whose expression of misgivings could appear divisive. Now, those of us who are committed to unity of purpose are called to higher moral ground. Are we going to discard people like that? No. Instead, let's give them time. Let us try to use methods to reach out to them so they can see our views in so much as we're trying to see their views, so that we can come to common ground. The one thing is that the majority of us know that we stand stronger when we're united. We accept the fact that what brings us together is stronger and bigger than what separates us, because we're into this not for ourselves, we are into this for the country. So yes, we shall have challenges, we shall have difficulties, but as long as we are willing to listen to one another, and as long as we commit ourselves to handling these matters without self being at the center, putting Zambia at the center, putting not only the current population of Zambia, but putting Zambia's future population in the microscope and saying what is it that they deserve, we will certainly get there. And as for me, who was a close student of President Edgar Lungu, I know how much premium he attached to unity of purpose of opposition political parties. And I always call upon my colleagues in the Patriotic Front that we must not think that because we are the largest opposition political parties, therefore we can do this on our own. No, we only achieve this once we unite with those who are like-minded. But I also want to say, Ambassador, that we also ought to be cautious of the fact that we are facing what you yourself referred to as a tyrant, a man who would not give up power easily. He has already demonstrated his desire to decimate political parties. He tried with the PF. He also tried, by the way, with the United National Independence Party, the Independence Party of Zambia, the founding party of Zambia's democracy. He tried to destabilize UNIP. Fortunately, UNIP came over this matter quicker than us in the Patriotic Front. So there is also a possibility that even when we're pursuing the objective of opposition unity, there could be some people who are sponsored to come and destroy the very intentions that we have. And therefore we have to be very cautious. We have to tread carefully, because we may end up just pushing against a closed door for some people who may have been sponsored. As things stand now, I wouldn't point at any particular party, but just to say we are taking all these matters into consideration. Our purpose is to have unity of purpose, and that unity of purpose must be effective and sincere unity of purpose, pursuing the objective of providing alternative governance to the Zambian people.
Thank you, Acting President. I'll let you drink some water. I want you to quickly come back and then, interact with our callers. We have a lot of interest by our callers, and we give them adequate time to participate. That way, I think, is also an immediate feedback. So let me just take a break to allow you to drink water, and myself also to drink some water. Then callers, this is your show. We are privileged. We are hosting Acting President of the Patriotic Front, Honorable Given Lubinda. He's former Justice Minister, he's former Member of Parliament, record 20 years in Kawata. He's also the current chairperson of the Tonse Alliance, one of the grand alliances in the political space in Zambia. Participate. Let's hear your views. Let's hear your concerns. You can send voice note, you can text, and you can call.
This country was a one-party state for many years. And I see the faces in here. Many were young. They have no understanding what a one-party state meant or means. Maybe that's why the young generation must read a little bit so we can protect this democracy that we have. We had an election in 1988. The next election should have been 1993. I hope my figures are correct. I see Dr. Peter Machungwa there. I think my narration is correct. The next election 5 years after should have been 1993. But the people of Zambia decided that they were tired of a one-party state. where largely freedoms were taken away from them. At our time in university, as undergraduates, students, you never talk to your roommates, two of you. Those days, university roommates, rooms were occupied by 2 students. I never spoke to my roommate about politics because I wasn't sure whether he was what we called them as SBs. Because in 2 people, one of them possibly is an informer in a one-party state. So you never talk to your colleague in the roommate. Maybe after 2-3 years, then you gather courage to talk to your roommate about your freedoms. So a number of young men and women after 1998 election decided that enough was enough. And Sejan was one of those. As you heard from the life's history, he was still just a young professional, only married in 1989. And 1990, Sejan left basically what you may call public office and joined politics together with people like Dr. Machungwa there, who I think was senior to him in age, I would suspect, and a number of others took a risk. General Matifeo, timing, clock. That was your message. Sejan understood that the call was made for the nation, for a courageous group to deliver the country away from one-party state into a multi-party state. That movement led to calling of an early election, 1991, 2 years ahead. And as you heard, he got elected as Member of Parliament for Mapatizia in 1991. First time he entered Parliament. Then he moved on. I see Vijay is there. He too had resigned from government.
Eh, papa avait Benobi ma caméra.
Into court. Now we've heard from the judges. They listened to the submissions and they have told us either tomorrow at the latest of so let us go back to our homes and let us be united. You shall be informed if the judgment is tomorrow. We'll ask you to come and listen to the judgment. One Zambia, one nation. I want to thank the leadership of the PF in South Africa and to thank all of you Zambians in South Africa. And don't worry about those who are hired to come and make noise at home. For you, you are doing this because of the love that you have. Please go back to your homes peacefully and let us meet again when we're going to receive the judgment. I also want to thank our brothers and sisters, the South Africans who are supporting us. There are many of our brothers and sisters, South Africans who have come to join us. There are many other Africans who have come to join us. Congolese are also here. Thank you, Malawians. Thank you. Thank you, all Africans who are here. Thank you. Let's remain united. One Zambia, one nation.
Those who voted for change must have now realized that the president they voted for has kept this country paralyzed. If you voted for him, but you're also feeling the pain, I hope you do your best to see it never happens again. Those who voted for change must have now realized that the president they voted for has kept this country paralyzed. If you voted for him, but you're also feeling the pain, I hope you do your best to see it never happens again.
Acting President, the phone lines are open. I'll start with Linda Banks. She's from the United Kingdom. She is an international journalist, but she played a key role in the last election. She was in the media team of the UPND, and she has begged that she reads this matter for you. Maybe, yeah, for the callers, just wait, let me just read this. Honorable, given Lubinda, I was